Certainly seen a lot of athletes that come into our program that are at 800 to 1,000 calorie deficit most days of the week, and that's really harmful for metabolic health. Our body is very adaptable, so over time, if you've been in that massive calorie deficit, your metabolism is just going to drop significantly. A lot of people think they need to do this really drastic change in order to see body composition results, and for me, I'm like, no, big drastic changes in nutrition, they don't stick. Our bodies really love to resist change, and so let's make the change progressive so that it's not overwhelming for you and your body and get you to where you need to be.
My guest today is Alex Larson. Alex is a registered dietitian and endurance sports nutrition coach who spent the last 15 years helping everyday runners, cyclists, and triathletes fuel their training in a way that's practical, sustainable, and actually works in real life. In this conversation, Alex breaks down how to improve and maintain body composition without underfueling your training, and how to think more clearly about carbohydrates, metabolic health, and performance longevity.
We want to make sure that people are in a good metabolic state. We'll put them at a slight calorie deficit and still fuel the workouts well. Remember, that's still goal number one. And how we typically do that is anything that an athlete is consuming during their workout for carbs and calories, we won't count that towards their baseline daily macronutrients and calories.
And it works that way.
We've been doing that for the past couple years and it works really, really well.
On the performance side, we explore whether exogenous ketones are truly worth the hype, how to fuel your runs based on duration and intensity, and why more fuel isn't always the right answer. We also get a bit nerdy about glucose to fructose ratios in sports gels, and why getting that balance wrong can lead to bloating and GI distress for so many athletes. So if you want to get leaner, stay lean, and perform better without compromising your health or your training, this conversation is very much for you. I hope you enjoy this episode with Alex Larson on the Endurance Lab podcast. Alex, if someone had just clicked on this podcast and is discovering you for the first time, could you very briefly share with us what you do professionally in the endurance nutrition space, the kind of athletes that you work with, and how you help them?
Yes. So I'm a registered dietitian, and I've been in this field for 15 years now, 16 years. And when I started as a dietitian, sports nutrition was not on my radar, but I also was really into triathlons and endurance sports. And then in 2014, so a little over 10 years ago, I did Ironman Wisconsin. And when I crossed that finish line, I had this kind of moment where I felt my calling, where I realized there's a lot of endurance athletes out there who really could use some support with their fueling. And for me, as an athlete, I have a career, I've got kids, and trying to fit in all of this training and trying to eat well on top of that, it's really challenging to do that. Mm-hmm. And so part of what my purpose is as an endurance sports dietitian is to help athletes really navigate all of those things and bridge that gap, and not just knowing how to eat, but also being able to do that with their really busy schedule.
Okay, I want to frame this conversation for someone that's watching or listening. Okay, so there are two runner avatars that I would like us to speak to. So The first one is someone that is new to running. Someone in the 40s, 50s, or 60s, they may be taking up running for fat loss, health, or to improve metabolic function. And the second run avatar that I would like to address is someone that is also in midlife, but have a bit of a running history and are perhaps targeting a new PR. I fall into the category, someone that's chasing maybe a marathon PR or a new 10K PR, or trying to go a longer distance, whether it's going from a marathon to an ultra or half to a full. So these are the two groups of people that the questions are going to revolve around. So let's start with the runner that is relatively new to running. With fat loss being one of someone's primary goal, how would they fuel their training in a way that supports performance and helps them preserve lean muscle mass, but also allows them to lose body fat gradually over time?
Yes, I have worked with this avatar a lot.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah. I would say the majority of the athletes that we work with come in with some sort of body composition goal. And I will even add on that second avatar that might be shooting for PRs. Maybe over time, they've even seen some gradual weight gain. And so now they're okay, I need to go back to losing, 5-10 pounds to get back to that weight that I was maybe 2, 3, 5 years ago. But for an athlete that is looking to see some fat loss to improve, and I like to use the term body composition changes because when a lot of athletes come to us and they say they want to lose weight, what they really mean is they want to lose that excess body fat and keep that lean muscle, keep that strength, right? And so what I focus on are a couple of different things. One is making sure that they're not underfueling the actual training itself. I think a lot of people associate the sugar consumption that we're promoting during workouts with weight gain, and that's not necessarily the case. What we're trying to do is really continue to still see great performance in the training, because then and that does a couple different things. One, it helps you like progress in your training and still see great results while we're working on body composition changes. But it also is going to help make sure that you don't go into the rest of your day in this massive energy deficit, right? Because when we see that, we tend to see people really have like a ferocious appetite the rest of the day. So then they're kind of battling this like, oh, I'm supposed to be eating less, eating better, but I'm like absolutely starving, and that willpower is going to give out eventually, usually in the evening hours. And that's where you see people kind of acting like a raccoon in their pantry at 8, 9 p.m. in the evening. And then also it just helps their energy levels. If they're going into the rest of the day having really good energy, they're going to be more active just throughout the day. They're going to be more productive, happier people, and that's really beneficial too. So we fuel the workouts really well. And then the rest of the day, that's where we can really focus in on body composition goals. Protein's a big one. I tend to see I wouldn't say most athletes, but a good chunk of our athletes, they're just not getting enough protein to support muscle recovery after workouts. Protein also is really helpful for satiety. So it's really going to help regulate appetite throughout the day as well. And when we're recovering well from our workouts, because a workout is a stress. Like people think like, oh, I got to train to get myself to progress. But I'm like, no, that's the stress on the body. And you have to think of yourself as a cycle where you train, and then you have this recovery period or a rest day. And that's where we really need to optimize nutrition to reduce that stress in the body. Because when our body has that kind of cumulative stress over and over and over, that's where we see people not seeing body composition results, because our body doesn't like to lose weight when it's stressed out. So making sure that we are really optimizing recovery, supporting lean muscle mass and preserving that is a huge part of that body composition change in preserving that muscle mass. And then we can look at that day-to-day nutrition. And we do try with our athletes to have somewhat of a calorie deficit, nothing crazy, nothing major. I've certainly seen a lot of athletes that come into our program that are at like an 800 to 1,000 calorie deficit most days of the week. And that's really harmful for metabolic health. It really, our body is very adaptable. So over time, if you've been in that like massive calorie deficit, your metabolism is just going to drop significantly. And so for us, we want to make sure that people are in a good metabolic state. We'll put them at a slight calorie deficit and still fuel the workouts well. Okay. Remember, that's still like goal number one. Yeah. And when we combine all of those kind of strategies, that's where we can see athletes still continue to train well and see that body composition change.
You mentioned metabolic flexibility.
Yes.
Metabolic health. So how should runners think about improving their metabolic health and flexibility without falling into the trap of underfueling? So you mentioned a small caloric deficit throughout the day, but I'm guessing that would not be during the time around the training. So how would, over a 24-hour period, how would someone optimize for that? So they're improving metabolic health and flexibility while still fueling their training and adjusting for the slight caloric deficit.
Well, and part of like my job is like simplifying things, right? And like when it comes to metabolic health, we need to be eating. Okay. Like that is like the number one rule. Like if we're not eating well and if we're not eating enough in our day, our metabolic health is going to suffer. Right. So when I think of really good metabolic health in an athlete, I see them waking up in the morning, maybe they're training. The athletes train sometimes in the morning, midday, evening. And when they wake up in the morning, they are within, an hour or so having a really good breakfast. And I'm not talking like a granola bar and a cup of coffee. I'm talking like 30 to 40 grams of protein. I'm talking about carbs. I'm talking about maybe some fruit and or vegetables. Like I'm talking a solid meal here. And then going through your morning and in 3-4 hours having another meal, right? And I'm not talking about a half sandwich and a salad like some people might have. Like I'm talking again, another 30 to 40 grams of protein, some carbs, and some fruit and or vegetable, getting in all of that nutrition that you need. And then again, maybe a mid-afternoon snack, because usually people, if they're eating around like 12 o'clock 12:31, and then they might not be having dinner until 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Like that's a really long time to go without eating. So having an intentional snack mid-afternoon to continue supplying that body with the energy and the nutrients it needs to help recover from your workout, and then having that really nice dinner in the evening. And by that point, you probably have gotten enough nutrition with those 3 really great meals and then maybe 1 or 2 snacks that you don't even need to have a bedtime snack. You can just go to bed well rested. You don't have this like overly full stomach, so your body's having to have to digest all this food while it's also trying to rest, having a really good quality rest, and then waking up the next morning and starting all over. So for me, when I think of good metabolic health, I think of someone that's got a really nice structure and routine in their eating. They're getting enough to eat to support their needs, and their body's in this really good like functional state.
How small of a caloric deficit should someone aim for if they're trying to achieve better body composition? Would it be different for men and women as well?
Well, I don't necessarily would say that we adjust it too much between men and women. Usually it's anywhere from 300 to 500 calories per day.
Okay.
Definitely no more than that. The other thing too, like with calories, is people are like, well, how many calories should I be eating? And I'm like, well, how many calories are you currently eating? They're like, I have no idea. I'm like, well, then what's the point of me telling you how many calories you should be eating? You know what I mean? Like it gets a little complicated. And so like when athletes come into our program, we do have them do some tracking, some journaling, so that we can get some insight of like, okay, on average, how many calories and macronutrients are you taking in right now? Where would we like you to be? And then how can we gradually get you there in a way that feels doable and realistic for you? Because I think a lot of people think they need to just do this like really drastic change in order to see body composition results. And for me, I'm like, no, like big drastic changes in nutrition, they don't stick. Like our bodies really love to resist change. And so like, let's make the change progressive so that it's not overwhelming for you and your body and get you to where you need to be. So it's hard for me to like give advice here that like people are just like, oh, tomorrow I'm just going to like reduce 500 calories from my diet. Yeah. And I'm like, I have concerns because we need to make sure that we're getting the right balance of where your calories are coming from, making sure you're getting plenty of protein. You're still getting a good amount of carbs. Fat is important, but we don't need like a lot of it. We tend to see athletes that might get too much fat in their diet just because it can add up pretty quickly, especially if they're eating like a lot of peanut butter or full fat dairy or like some fattier meats, like
tons
those
of
types
avocados.
of things. Yeah. Oh my God. Avocados, like great nutrition, but like when they're eating like a whole avocado, I'm like,
huge bowl
that was like almost your entire fat budget for the day. And so like those like type of things that can be some simple changes of just portion size and awareness can make a really big difference in helping people see that sustainable body comp results.
And how much protein do you recommend?
1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilo body weight.
Okay.
So typically when I get an athlete that comes into our program, I'll do around 1.8, kind of in the middle there, which is a good amount. If they are in that second avatar you mentioned, like they're a little bit, shooting for PR, they're already a fairly lean, strong athlete, I might push them up to 2 if we've got the room for it calorically because of just how much training they're doing. Or if I've got an athlete that is got like 30 pounds that they would like to lose and they're not super active right now because they're still working on that weight loss, then we might do something like a 1.6, 1.7. Yeah, it kind of just depends on the athlete, but typically somewhere in that 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilo. And
what percentage of across the 3 macronutrients would you divide it?
Usually it's around 25%, but sometimes I've got a couple athletes where it might be more like 21, 22%, and then I have other athletes that's more even closer to 30. So, but on average, yeah.
Okay.
Fat usually it's around 30%, and carbs anywhere from like 40 to 50 to 55. Again, nutrition is such an individualized thing for athletes, so it's hard for me to like give a specific percentage. And remember, we still want to fuel the workouts well too. So, and how we typically do that is anything that an athlete is consuming during their workout for carbs and calories, we won't count that towards their like baseline daily macronutrients and calories. And it's a little different than how some other dietitians might do it, but we've been doing that for the past couple of years and it works really, really well.
Okay, so the caloric deficit that someone is targeting does not include the calories that comes from the carbs that is used to fuel the training. Am I hearing you right? Okay.
That's how my team and I have been working with our athletes in doing that. And the reason why we do it that way is because endurance athletes tend to be really type A. So like if I give them a carb or calorie target and then they go out for like a 3-hour long run and they fueled it really, really well, and then they put in the calorie, like the fuel that they took in during that workout. And then all of a sudden they're at like 300% of their carbohydrate target for the day. And I'm like, well, yeah, you obviously had to take in that fuel for the run, but they hate that. Like that they can see that they're way over. The type A personality hates that. So I'm like, let's just pull it out and keep it separate. And then we can just focus on consistency in that day-to-day nutrition. And we'll just calculate their needs based off of how much they're training.
Okay, and it works that way.
So it works really well.
Okay.
Yeah, it works really well because they always want to underfuel their workout then because they don't want to go over in calories on the targets that we give them because they're so afraid of weight gain if they go over. They think that if they like consume all of these calories and carbs during their workout, they're going to gain weight. Okay. And so we've just kept it separate and it works really well.
Okay, we'll get to how to fuel for specific workouts a bit later on. But underfueling during training, right? What are the short and long-term consequences for endurance athletes if they routinely underfuel their training? Quick pause here. If you're enjoying this conversation so far, I just want to give you a bit of context around what we're building with the Endurance Lab podcast. From January 2026, we'll be releasing 3 podcast episodes each month. The whole premise of this show is to bring thoughtful, evidence-based conversations around nutrition, training, performance, and recovery, with those discussions shaped through the lens of long-term health and longevity for midlife runners and endurance athletes. So, if there are specific nuances within topics that you'd like me to explore more deeply or certain guests that you'd like me to have on the show, leave them in the comments. I genuinely read all those comments, and I'll do my best to either reach out to the right experts or shape future episodes around your questions. Because ultimately, this podcast is about helping you understand the nuances so you can make better decisions in your own training and life. Alongside experts in endurance sports, from researchers and coaches to specialists in different areas of performance, we'll also be featuring masters athletes, people who've achieved meaningful performance breakthroughs later in life, to share their stories, the mistakes they've made, how their training has evolved with age, and the practical lessons they've learned along the way. So, if this kind of conversation resonates with you, consider subscribing and setting the notification bell to all so you'll be notified whenever a new episode goes live. Alright, let's get back to the conversation. What are the short and long-term consequences for endurance athletes if they routinely underfuel their training? So
short-term consequences, right away off the bat, you probably are going to notice your workouts aren't going to be feeling great. And this would even be long-term. I would even say that it's going to be long-term too. And it all comes down to like that recovery, right? Like you're not only is your workout going to feel harder, where it's going to, even your easy workouts might even start to feel hard too, but that recovery is going to be really poor. You're not going to see yourself bouncing back from those runs as quickly or those workouts as quickly. And that, like I said, that cumulative stress over time, you're going to have to take extra rest days or you're just going to have a lot more muscle soreness. You're not going to notice yourself actually like progressing and getting faster. You're just going to be doing all this training, but you're not going to see any gains. And then you're going like, what's the point of me doing all this when I'm not getting fast? It's really frustrating, right? You're going to notice a lot of times short term, you're going to see hunger increase pretty significantly, where athletes like, I feel like my hunger is out of control. I feel like I'm constantly hungry. I'm constantly like grabbing something to eat. And then especially on rest days, they'll just be absolutely ravenous. But then over time, long term, what we tend to see is your hunger hormones will get a little deregulated and then you kind of lose your appetite. So if I get an athlete that comes in and they're like, I just am not hungry at all in the morning. I don't get hungry much during the day. And then most of my hunger comes in the evening hours. I'm like, all right, we got to fix that. We got to help get yourself back to fueling really well, eating really consistently throughout the day and kind of bring that hunger back. It usually takes a couple weeks. It's actually one of the more quicker gratification things that I like to see in nutrition, where we can get that hunger coming back and have it be more regulated. I think that's a really good sign that we're making good progress. So yeah, like those are probably some of the short-term consequences. And then long-term would just be like chronic injuries. If you're like constantly having those little niggles of pain, those like muscle pulls, tears, stress fractures, those ones are going to be some pretty significant long-term consequences, because then you're really impeding your progress in your training. And, if you think of, I was just interviewing Dakota Popane. She was the American marathoner that got, was it 12th in the Paris Olympics? And, when I look at her running resume and how she really progressed very consistently over the years in improving her running, she attributed that to, she's only had like one decent injury in her entire career. And she just was able to progress so well because she didn't have any hangups with like chronic injuries. And so if we can keep people well fueled in a nice, healthy state, not getting their body overly stressed with like underfueling and poor recovery, that's where we really can see athletes really thrive.
I'm guessing from everything that you just said, or since the time we started recording this conversation, you are not someone that would promote fasted training at any intensity.
I'm not a fan of fasted training, that's for sure. I feel like our training is already hard enough. It's like, why would you intentionally make it feel worse? Right?
But so many people are promoting fasted training, and they say, it promotes fat loss because you are not consuming any carbohydrates and you are keeping your insulin level low before you start training, and that's why your body is able to metabolize, to oxidize more fat. What do you make of that?
Sure. Absolutely. You would see more fat oxidation happening. However, you are going to also see a lot of muscle breakdown during that process too. And for these athletes that are in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, preserving muscle mass should be your top priority. It is the key, I feel like, for longevity in your sport. And we're doing this because we're supposed to enjoy it, right? And if you're constantly getting injured, constantly feeling like muscle soreness and pain, like that's not fun. And it's not going to set you up for success as you get older. So I'm not a huge fan of fasted workouts because one, it's just like adding suffering to your already hard training. You're going to see more muscle breakdown. You typically, what I see from athletes is, they will have this fasted training and then they really don't prioritize the post-workout nutrition. And so then they're going to go throughout the rest of the day behind on nutrition and seeing consequences from that. So there's just a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do fasted training. And here's the thing, like I was on a podcast a couple years ago. It was a running podcast, and I had shared a story about how I would wake up at like 5:30 in the morning, 2-3 days a week, to meet my friend who lives just down the road for a half an hour jog. And it was like our little mom time where we would just like chit chat, my little girl time. And when I would wake up in the morning, I would have like an applesauce pouch. Like they're really popular here in the States. Yep. They're like 15 grams of carb. And when I had that little applesauce pouch or yogurt pouch or whatever it was, I noticed that in the last like 5-10 minutes of that run, I just felt a little better. Right? Versus if I hadn't had it, that last 10 minutes of the run just kind of felt like a drag. And I had shared this story in this podcast. And then I later, a couple months, went on YouTube and I looked at the comments of that episode, and people were bashing me. Were like, that's so bad that she has to have that applesauce pouch to run for 30 minutes. And I was like, I'm sorry, why are we shaming me for that? Because what they didn't know, what I didn't share, was that I have young kids, and my kids eat dinner, like my family and we eat dinner between like 5 and 6 p.m. because my kids can't go longer than that. And I have a pretty substantial dinner that I don't really feel hungry the rest of the evening. So for me to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, it's been like almost 12 hours since I last ate. So I'm going to have a little snack before I go and run for 30 minutes. And then I'm going to have a really good sized breakfast to really fuel the rest of my day. And so I just thought that was so interesting how judgmental they were for the fact that I felt better having 15 grams of carb, which is not very much, to fuel a 30-minute jog with my girlfriend. And so, like, to me, it's just interesting, the opinions out there on nutrition, but like, I'm not here to judge anyone in their choices, but I want them to make informed decisions and do what's best for them.
Nutrition is sometimes almost like a religion.
Yes, it is. And like we have all of these camps and villages and opinions. And I'm like, look, I like to look at the research, but then I also like to think about logistically what's going to set people up for success in everyday life too.
How would someone know if they are underfueling across a whole day? Are there any signs that they should look out for?
Your hunger, having like ferocious hunger, or over time, if all of a sudden you're like not hungry at all day, like that's a pretty good sign that they've been chronically underfueling for a long time. Energy levels, if they just one of the most common ones I see, especially for athletes on the weekends when they may go for their long run on a Saturday morning, and then the rest of the day they're like, I did my long run, now I'm going to just lay on the couch all day long because I just don't have the energy to do anything else in my life. Or they have to take a nap, or like those to me, I'm like, okay, we got to fix that, because that should not be the norm for runners and for endurance athletes. I want them to get up Saturday morning, get done with their workout, and then have a good breakfast and have great energy the rest of the day to still be a happy and productive human. One of my favorite wins is when an athlete's like, I did my long run this morning and then I played with my kids. I didn't snap at them once the entire day. I got to the evening and I put the kids to bed, and my spouse even said, like, this is different. Like, you're not crabby on a Saturday anymore. Those are my favorite wins, like more so than any PR that an athlete will have. The fact that they're more productive and happier in their day-to-day life is my favorite win out of anything once they improve their nutrition. So like, to me, those little things that might have been like just normalized of like, yeah, like everyone feels tired after their long run. It's just normal. I'm like, no, I think that if we can optimize nutrition, you still should be able to like get some yard work done, or shovel snow, or play with your kids and clean your bathroom, and like do all of the things that you still need to do in your life after you get done with that workout.
So for the runner that is on the couch and unable to do anything, do you think that they're underfueling the workout, or are they underfueling the whole day in general? Or both?
I think probably both.
Okay.
I would first start with the workout itself, because that's usually the easiest one, because not only is that going to benefit them in that day, but also it's going to set them up to continue to see their workouts thrive, and it's going to set them better up for having a stronger race too. And it's going to help build that gut tolerance so that when they get to race day and they need to fuel with, let's say, 70, 80 grams of carb per hour, their body is pretty used to that because they've been doing that in their training. So I would start with adding some more carbs before and then during the workout, see how that feels. But then I would really prioritize like having a good solid post-workout meal within, an hour and a half, 2 hours after that workout to really support that recovery and energize the rest of your day.
Now that you mentioned racing, let's transition to someone that is chasing a PR. So, for someone chasing a PR, I think their goal is to optimize their nutrition to help them perform the best. But it seems to me that there are two schools as far as nutrition for endurance is concerned. There is one school, at least led by elite cyclists and triathletes, where they're pushing very, very high amounts of carbohydrates per hour, 120 grams or maybe even more. And then there's another.
They're going more. It's crazy how much they're able to put down.
And then there's another camp that is the low carb, high fat camp. Which do you think is a better nutrition strategy for someone between 40 to say 65 that are trying to achieve a PR and not a pro athlete?
I'm definitely in the team carb camp for sure. With the high fat kind of keto style dieting of athletes, the research doesn't show it's superior to a carb fueled performance. I would say that the times that the high fat style works is for more of like the ultra runners, where they're running for really long periods of time at a much lower VO2 max effort. They're not really having any like surges of power. They're keeping things very steady throughout the whole time. That's probably the situation where it would work the best. But for the majority of athletes, they might have they want to have a strong kick at the end, or they're, I'm thinking of like, when you watch like the marathoners and all of a sudden, they're like all running as a group, and then you've got a couple people that like attack and then
breakaway,
breakaway, you know what I mean? Or search. And like you look at like the Tour de France, and you have the athletes that, you know, again, a breakaway of like 3-4 riders, and they're gonna get away from the peloton. Like those situations, that's where carbs are going to really shine as their energy source, and you're not going to get that from an athlete that has that high fat, low carb diet. And also I'm thinking logistically of the athletes in their 30s, 40s, 50s who have careers, who have families, and to eat a high fat, low carb diet is really, really hard. You would have to eat something very different from your coworkers if you were going to go out to dinner, like a business dinner. You're going to have to eat very differently from what your kids are eating, and your kids are going to notice. You know what I mean? Like, like logistically, socially, the high fat, low carb diet, it's very tough.
I've been down the road. I went on keto for 6 months, and it's so difficult to find food to eat.
I'm
eating cheese the whole day, and I'm scooping out beef fat to fry my eggs in.
Yeah, man, I had an athlete, a cyclist, who really loved the high fat thing. He's like, but I get to the holidays, and my aunt's like Christmas holiday desserts that she makes are like my absolute favorite. Like, it's just so much nostalgia and culture around me eating those. He goes, and it doesn't align with my diet. And I'm like, yeah, like I get that. So there's so many different like complexities to why people eat the way that they do. And I find that it's just a lot easier to live your life by including carbs. And it's going to support performance, absolutely, especially if you want to be someone that can be strategic and find areas of the race where you do want to surge and go at a higher intensity and effort. And you have to have carbs available to do that.
For someone going longer, what are your thoughts on exogenous ketones? Do they play a role? Can they help?
No.
Okay.
Well, that's the short answer, right? So, I did have a researcher who spent his career studying ketones on my podcast last summer, and the research just isn't there to support them offering a benefit. They are very expensive. They taste awful. And you're going to get so much more benefit out of having like really great muscle glycogen stores. That's our body's form of storing carbohydrates. You're going to get so much more performance out of just being consistently well fueled with carbs than you are with taking ketones.
So there's no purpose to take ketones, or is there any other purpose?
Some people will take it for like mental clarity. There is some potential claims around like recovery, but the research isn't super strong. And like I said, they're expensive. They taste terrible. Yeah. Like, to me, whenever people look at those types of stuff, I'm like, okay, let's look at the risks and the benefits. And, for me, it's like, I want to get the most bang for my buck when I'm looking at things. It's like, if we can see really great, consistent nutrition, you don't need to look at those like shiny, expensive things that might give you like these really small marginal gains. And there is actually some research that found that performance declined when people were taking ketones.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah. So it's like, like save your money. Like buy some fancy sports shells that you really love and use your money for that.
There's also something that I saw which said that consuming ketones actually raise or causes your pancreas to secrete insulin, which was very interesting. Have you heard of that? That it has that effect. Okay. Why?
That was.
Do you know why that happens?
So insulin will go up, and then that insulin it shuts down fat release from the adipose tissue, and so that's why like when people who do like the ketogenic diet and then they're taking ketones on top, that doesn't make sense, right? So it's kind of an interesting response. I don't know why. I'd have to ask Dr. Little, who I interviewed. He was excellent when I interviewed him because like I understand the concept of ketones, but I don't know it like he does in terms of like studying it for decades in research. And so, it was really fascinating. But the gist to me, like in talking with him, was that they're not worth the expense. And
hype.
Like I said, they taste like, I don't know, some sort of like battery acid. Like it's just really, it's not good.
And if it causes, if, like you said, if someone is on a ketogenic diet and they don't have a lot of glycogen or glucose in their blood, and if with that insulin rise, which means it shuts off your body's ability to oxidize adipose tissue.
Yeah.
And you don't have fat to burn and you don't have glucose to burn, you bonk straight away.
Yeah.
Right.
100%. Yeah. So it's like if your glycogen stores are already depleted and your body's having to like rely on fat as energy, and fat's a very slow source of energy, which is why people will typically like slow down, is so it gives your body some time and chance to break down and oxidize that fat. And then you take these ketones and it's going to inhibit lipolysis. It's like you're making it worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that swear by them, and I'm like, sure. But for the everyday athlete, you're going to get so much more benefit out of just eating well and fueling well in your day to day.
For this runner that's chasing a PR, when it comes close to their race, a lot of times they want to be trying to cut a bit of weight to achieve their racing weight. What do you think is the best way they can approach achieving this without minimizing by minimizing the negative impacts on performance, on recovery, and on their health?
Yeah, I feel like with body composition results, you should have worked months and months and months in advance to work yourself down to that racing weight. Though I don't really love like the term racing weight. I do struggle with athletes that come in there like, I need to get to this number for race day. And I'm like, that's just like unrealistic to say you have to weigh a certain weight on race day in order to know for sure that you're going to perform well. And the athletes that are like a couple weeks out from the race, like, oh, I got to drop like another like 3-4 pounds before I get to the race. I'm like, that is going to really harm your performance. You trying to drop 3 pounds in just a matter of a few weeks than it is for you to just like really hone in on making sure you're going into that race well fueled, well recovered. You're going to get so much better performance out of you doing it that way versus like focusing on the number on the scale. So we talked about body composition and helping athletes like see that, but this should be something where we're focusing on like at most 1 to 2 pounds per week weight loss. And then any of that, like if you think of you like step on the scale one day and then the next day like you jumped up a kilo or you lost a kilo, that's just water fluctuations. And like when I think of like carb loading, an athlete can see their weight jump up 1-2 kilos, and that's just water weight. For every gram of glycogen that gets stored, it's like 3 grams of water that gets stored with it. So it's like you want to go into that race with really good glycogen stores, and you're going to have that water weight on there. Versus if you like restrict for a week before the race, and you're going to be down in weight, but you are going to feel like crap during your race, and that's not good. So usually I just tell athletes, just don't weigh yourself. Don't worry about that in the last couple weeks. Like just focus on you going into the race healthy and feeling really great.
How would you recommend someone carb load? I mean, the old school taught us a lot of pasta, but what is a strategy that you would recommend? So
the guidelines for carb loading say 8 to 10, 8 to 12 grams of carb per kilo body weight. So certainly we have some athletes where like their goal is to just finish the race, where we might do like 4, 5, 6 grams of carb per kilo. From 24 hours before, or how long before? Well, it's going to depend on the race. So if they're doing like half marathon, anything like 2.5 hours in duration to, I'd say like if they're doing like 2 to 2.5 hours, you could do like a 1-day carb load. If you have an athlete that's going over 3 hours, then I probably would do a 2-day carb load. And then if you got like more ultra distance, like your 6+ hour events, then you could even do like a 3-day carb load. So the longer the event, the longer you're going to carb load. It's not just like a big bowl of pasta the night before. We're talking like a multi-day, like really super loading those glycogen stores. And there is some research out there are saying that carb loading isn't as effective as what we thought it was going to be, but I'm still a huge fan of the carb loading because a lot of athletes just tend to not go in with really great glycogen stores if they're not actually carb loading. And the other thing is that it's like an insurance policy. So let's say you go in with the best intentions to fuel and execute this like perfect nutrition fueling plan in your race. And let's say you like drop a bottle. By the way. You drop a bottle, or you drop like you lose your gels, or something happens. You know what I mean? And that carb loading is your insurance plan. And for like ultra runners, like the really long distance runners, if you're fueling the crap out of the race itself, if you don't have a good carb load to back yourself up, like you're really going to suffer. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a struggle. Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of it. And the thing about carb loading, people think like, oh, I'm just going to eat like massive amounts of food. It's like, no, that's not the point. The point is to really focus on high carb, low fat foods. I'm okay with a moderate amount of protein. I've actually started including a protein target with my athletes who are carb loading, because if they don't get enough protein and they're just eating this massive amounts of carbs, they get like this weird emptiness feeling in the afternoon evenings. And I've had it myself too, where it's like, am I hungry? Am I not? Like, food doesn't sound good right now, but I still feel like I'm hungry. Like, it's a weird feeling. It's hard to describe, but once you like have had like experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so if I include just some moderate protein throughout the day, that kind of helps nip that in the bud. I think it just helps stabilize blood sugars a bit.
Especially if you're doing 3-day carb load and if you don't go with any protein for that long. Yeah. And when you're doing a carb load, it can be really easy to do a lot of sweet foods and you really can get burnt out on sweet. So I try and really have some savory foods involved. Like my team and I were talking about our favorite carb loading foods, and we have Panera Bread as a restaurant chain in the US, and they have this chicken noodle soup in a bread bowl, and it's like 130 grams of carb. It's like very savory. And I'm like, oh, give me that every day, like for a carb load. Or like rice, and like I have had a runner that really loved to do sushi the night before, like at a nice restaurant, sushi. And I'm like, can you add like a big bowl of rice, like as your side with that? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And so that made a really big difference for his marathon, just to have that extra source of carbs with the sushi, because you get some protein in there, like you got the saltiness from the soy sauce, which is great. And so just being strategic and having some savory foods along with the sweet, I think really helps you go into your race not like already tired of sugary things. On those sugary things that we consume when we're training and racing, so basically gels and sports drinks. Well, the different brands have different ratios of glucose and fructose ratios in their products. Some go 2:1 as in glucose to fructose, and some go 1:0.8, or different ratios in between that. Is there a preferred ratio?
Yeah, should people be paying attention to that?
Yeah. And for someone that's slightly older, is having a gel that has a slightly lower concentration of fructose be better, or it doesn't really matter?
First and foremost, my goal is always to make sure athletes are just getting enough like carbs in, right? Like that's like first goal. And I want to make sure that they're choosing fuel sources that are going to taste good to them still, like towards the end of their race. Like there's all of those factors, right? And I don't typically like go down the like 2:1, 1:0.8 ratio too much. However, I had a couple athletes last summer, 2 female athletes. One was a cyclist, very high level cyclist, and the other one was a triathlete. And both of them were reporting in like the 5-6 hour marks of their races, having this like abdominal distension where they're like really bloated, where they're like, I looked like they're like, Alex, I looked pregnant. Like I just had this bulging, hard, bloated stomach. And I was like, all right, why is this happening? Because for the one athlete, I'd worked with her before and we had never had that issue, but she had switched up the fuel that she was using. And what I was attributing to it, and I was talking with another sports dietitian about it as well, and he confirmed my suspicions, is these sports products that they were using were really high in maltodextrin. And maltodextrin is a polysaccharide, so it's a bunch of glucose molecules together. And the combination of sports fuel that they were using, I think it was just too much glucose, because our body can only absorb so much glucose at one point during a time. So I think it's like up to 60 grams per hour is around like with glucose. And then because fructose gets metabolized a different pathway, they don't compete against each other. So how I describe it is like glucose gets to our muscles via bus. Okay. And there's only so many molecules that can fit on the bus. Right. And so then Fructose goes by train, and so it goes by a different pathway, and so we can get more energy to our muscles at a faster rate, right? And so because these athletes were consuming a little too much glucose, it was sitting in their gut for too long and it was kind of fermenting and causing that bloating. And so what we did was we switched up their sports fuel to be a little bit higher fructose and a little bit lower glucose, and they didn't have that issue anymore. And what's interesting is the cyclist, she rode for like a team, and the coach told her, well, you just need to go straight maltodextrin. Like and so she listened to him instead of listening to me, and she had the worst race ever. Like it was awful in terms of like that bloating and performance issue. And so she ended up not working with that coach anymore by the end of the season because his advice was not sound. And so I think in those types of situations where you've got a higher level athlete, they're consuming fuel for really long periods of time, you might want to look at making sure you're not getting too much glucose because you can potentially have that kind of bloating fermentation happening.
So a higher percentage of fructose for someone that's consuming a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I would just make sure that you're not going overboard with the maltodextrin or the glucose, making sure that you're getting a good blend. But like I said, most athletes don't experience that. That was kind of a unique case with those two women.
I've experienced it.
Have you?
Yeah. I mean, I did a 100-mile ultra run. And all I consumed was gels.
Oh, interesting. Well, because for a lot of ultra runners, it's like a buffet out there of like a cup of noodles and burritos and pizza. And so
I can't get it down.
You can't get it down.
No, I just don't feel like eating when I'm on the move. So for 30 hours...
That's something that I struggle with too, and I think about when I'm out riding long distances, because I've been doing a lot of gravel cycling here in the States. That's kind of been my sport these days, and it's such a skill to be able to take in fuel when your body and your brain are like, nah, we don't want that right now, but you need to, and so like it really is a skill that you have to develop. So yeah, but anyways,
I think it was more so the fact that if I were to do that, I would be sitting down and my body would cool down, and it was more difficult to get going again because I did an ultra before that, and I would sit at the aid station and relax for a while, and it was just my legs were like stone after that 5 minutes of rest. So when I did 100-mile, I was like, I'm not going to sit. I'm just going to go to the aid station, get drinks, and keep going. So that's why I chose not to consume any of the food along the way, and I just took gels with me. I had some energy bars, but most of it was just gels. And the bloating was like.
Do you put any hydration mixes in your fluids?
Electrolytes, and then I have the carbohydrates separately.
Okay, I'm a huge fan of the hydration mixes for ultra runners and for cyclists, because if you're already having to carry that fluid on you, you might as well put a good dose of carbs in there too with the electrolytes. But that's a lot of gels though. Like, more power to you for getting in that many gels for that long.
Yeah, it was a lot. I think it was about 2 kilograms of gel, so like 4 pounds of gels over the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, people talk about a fatigue, like taste fatigue. It didn't happen to me. I just forced it down. It just went down. Yeah, well, that's the beauty of gels, is you get them down so quick, you don't even really think about it. They just, that's why they're so popular, is because they're fast. Like for me, riding a gravel bike, especially when the terrain might be a little more technical and I don't want to take my hands off the handlebars a lot to like be eating, a granola bar or chews or whatever, like those gels, you can get them down in just seconds and then go back to what you're supposed to be doing. So they do have a really great logistical use for them, is they're so quick. What kind of gels were you using? I made my own. I took maltodextrin and fructose, and I did a 2-to-1. Yeah. I mean, it was so much, but and on that point, was it flavored? No. I just did unflavored, pure. 2 parts maltodextrin, 1 part fructose. Maybe I should have gone to 0.8 to 1. Now that I've spoken to you, the next time I'll do that. I would consider even testing out a hydration mix in your fluids too, because like I said, I find that's just you're already having to consume that.
You're doing that testing? Yeah. I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah. I mix the gels that I make.
Yeah. With the water.
With liquid, then with unflavored electrolytes, and I put like a concentrate of blackcurrant syrup or
nice
strawberry syrup, something like that. That I just get like a simple bottle of a syrup.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of that, or blueberry syrup, some kind of berries, something with a bit of acidity to cut that.
I'm a berry fan too. Like I think lemon lime is the number one most popular flavor, but I'm not a lemon lime fan. I like a strawberry or a raspberry or something like that.
Yeah, and just put it in the bowl and it tastes great. It works well.
Yeah.
So, but if someone doesn't want to make it, and if you go out and buy gels all the time, it's very costly. Are there cheaper alternatives to it? Or, if someone doesn't want to spend $2 on a gel every 30 minutes of a run.
I know. When you do the math, it's really sad.
Yeah, it's like, that run cost me $20.
I agree. There's definitely some more budget-friendly gels out there. Like there's a brand here in the States called Carb's Fuel, and 50 grams of carb in those gels. So it's a pretty good size gel.
That's a bigger size, okay.
And it's like $2 here in the US.
Really? Okay.
For 50 grams. Versus like you think of like a Morton gel, like their 40 gram gel is like $5 US.
Yeah.
It's so expensive. I mean, granted, like Morton has a great product. Like I do really like their gels, but I usually rotate between a few different stuff, some more budget friendly than others. And then that's the other reason why I like hydration mixes, is because you can get a really good dose of carbs and it tends to be the most bang for your buck.
And if someone doesn't want to go down that road, and if they want something even cheaper, would Coke do? Flat Coke? I know some people do flat Coke. I mean, if they don't want to go down the road of what I did and make their own gels, something they can get from the supermarket, what's cheaper or more budget-friendly?
I've had athletes that do like fruit snacks. I don't know if you guys have Nerds gummy clusters over there in Europe, but those are like all the rage here in the US.
Okay.
That just kind of supplementing that in their training. I don't know if I would necessarily do that on race day. And the reason why is because with a lot of more of your like food type of fuel sources, you have to carry a lot of it on you, and there's wrappers that you have to deal with. And so I think it's nice to supplement with some of that here and there, just to like change things up and save yourself some money, but just make sure that you are including some of that sports fuel here and there, just to make sure your gut is like used to it. And then on race day, I would for sure have a strategy where you're using mostly sports fuel, just because it's so easy to like open and get down and not have a ton of wrappers, because like I said, those 50 gram gels, like you can get a lot of carbs in just from that one gel. So like for me, when I'm on the bike for 3 hours in a race, my liquids will have a good dose of my carbs, and then I do one gel an hour. Very easy to do math for me in my head while I'm racing, and I know I'm getting enough carbs to fuel that race. And I'm not having a ton of like things I'm having to grab and like deal with garbage and all of that. So like keeping things as simple as possible in consuming it, carrying it, doing the math in your head, making sure you're getting enough carbs, I think is all really important when planning out your fueling strategy for a race.
Let's talk quickly about some practical applications for training. So if someone's going out on a run, let's talk about a low intensity, well, not low, but low to moderate intensity, say a zone 2 run, all right? Between 1 hour, 2 hours, and 3 hours, how would they fuel differently for 3 different durations?
So typically anything longer than like 60 to 75 minutes, you would want to, I'd say like once you get over that 75-minute mark, you're looking at like 0 to 30 grams of carb per hour. Anything from 90 to 2.5 hours, we're looking at like 30 to 60 grams of carb per hour. If you're like under that 75 mark, if you need to take something, 30-ish grams would probably be fine. But if you fueled well before the workout, you probably could get away without having to fuel any during. Once you get to that like 2.5 hour mark, then we're looking at like 60 to 90 grams of carb per hour. These are what the guidelines are saying. However, that 60 to 90 gram recommendation was really based off of, in their research, they were finding any athletes going above 90 is where we started to see GI distress increasing. And so they said 60 to 90 because they figured that was going to be the best fueling rate for people that they weren't going to see any ill side effects GI-wise. However, now we are seeing athletes going well beyond the 90 grams and still being able to tolerate that. So we're finding that even though we don't have any specific gut training protocols, we're seeing athletes really their guts are adapting and they're able to tolerate above and beyond 90. Going above 90, you really have to make sure that you actually need to go above 90. So for athletes that are definitely getting into that upper level of effort, putting out a lot of power or intensity consistently over long periods of time, they're going to be burning through a lot of energy. And so it would make sense to go above 90. So when I have athletes that come in and maybe they're currently at like 60, 70 grams of carb per hour, I might say, okay, let's go to 80. Let's try 90. And then over time, we're at 90 and they're like, you know what? Towards the end of that training session, and I started to get a little hungry. Like I felt like I maybe needed some more. I'm like, oh, okay, let's try 100 and see how that feels. And so like, yeah, actually 100 felt pretty good. And then maybe a couple months later, as they're progressing in their training, they're like, you know what? I feel like I maybe could go a little more. Like there's situations like that where you can kind of build up. But I don't think for a lot of athletes that are kind of, doing this as a hobby, they're not like crazy competitive, putting out massive watts. In those cases, we don't need to go above 90. Like we can stay in that 60 to 90 range and they're fine performance wise. But the higher level you get as an athlete, the more carbs you're definitely probably going to benefit from.
So for someone that's doing 2.5 hours or more, they would start at 60, 90 grams from the first hour.
Yeah. So assuming that you fueled well before the workout, you could start taking in fuel in like that 20, 30 minutes. Though I have become more of a fan of front loading nutrition in your longer workouts because athletes tend to very easily get behind. So it's nice if they can start fueling a little bit earlier so that they can stay on top of it versus like waiting an hour before they start taking in fuel and then they're kind of like trying to play catch up. So it used to be like, oh, you don't need to start until you're 60 minutes in. And I'm like, no, let's start at like 20 minutes because then we can really stay on top of your energy and make sure that you're finishing strong and you're not like, because especially with endurance efforts, we're having to take in so much fuel. Once you get behind, it's really hard to get caught back up because then you like start getting worried about gut tolerance at that point.
Yeah. You can't really consume more and try and make up for it. There's only so much your gut can handle at a certain time.
And same thing with like hydration. You want to stay ahead of that, especially if it's hot and humid out. Like you want to start right away, like replenishing those fluid losses so you don't get behind and get dehydrated.
We talked a lot about strategies that people can apply over the past hour, but knowing a strategy is one thing, implementing it is another. So if someone's interested to work with you, what's the best way they can reach out or how they can apply to work with you?
Yeah, so you go to my website, alexlarsonnutrition.com. I've got a nutrition services page on there. I could check out what is all involved with that one-on-one nutrition coaching program, and there's an application link on there.
Okay.
When you fill out that application, I get an email. I'll review the application and send an invite to have a call with me. And so I vet all of our athletes in terms of asking a lot of questions, visualizing what it would look like for them in the program, and then we'll talk about that more. So we're both on the same page and understanding like expectations, and we'll decide on length in the program too, because everyone comes in with different goals, different starting point. And so my goal is always to help athletes not only know how they're supposed to fuel, but like you said, implement it, practice it, have it be something that feels really routine for them so that when they graduate from the program, they feel very comfortable and confident doing things on their own without having to take a food journal for the rest of their life. That's my goal. Yeah. And it takes us some time. Some people, they might be there 3-4 months in the program and others might be in there for like 6, 7, 8 months because again, we want them to build those skills, tools, knowledge, strategies so that they can see success with their fueling for life.
We use the term or the label athlete a lot across this whole conversation. But if someone is new to running and they don't feel like they are an athlete yet, can they still apply to work with you?
Absolutely. I think that no matter how serious of an athlete you are, and I think anyone that trains intentionally for some, like even if it's just for their general fitness, even if they're not even necessarily working towards a race, I think that they are worthy of fueling really well and feeling their best.
And the last question that I want to ask you, which is usually my closing question for all my guests, is what does endurance mean to you?
Endurance for me is showing up, challenging yourself, and doing things that maybe you even are questioning whether you're capable of.
Alex Larson, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
If there were topics in this conversation that you'd like me to go deeper into with this guest, leave them in the comments. If there's enough interest, I'll invite the guest back onto the show and dedicate an episode to a deeper follow-up conversation. Thanks for watching all the way through, and I'll see you in the next episode.